In this video, we'll give you 10 sneaky starts for Week 11 of the fantasy football season. I'm Jim Coventry, joined with Anthony Cervino of RotoWire. Anthony, my sneaky start quarterback is Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers against the Cincinnati Bengals. Justin Herbert has been throwing the ball more in recent weeks, and he's actually put up very good fantasy numbers in the last 3 weeks. Now, last week against Tennessee, he didn't have to throw a whole lot of 18 passes. He still ran in a touchdown. He still passed one in. So he's playing at a high level, and this week they're playing the Bengals. And people think the Bengals defense is terrible. They kind of are. They're very good against the run. And an inefficient rushing attack of the Chargers, probably not getting a lot of traction here. So what are they going to have to do to keep up in a shootout? Justin Herbert's going to have to throw. I think this is a big week for Herbert. Anthony, who do you like at quarterback?
Yeah, quarterback, I'm going to the Russell Wilson. Well, since taking over the past 3 games, he's given us at least 18 fantasy points at quarterback, including 2 games in the 20s. This past game against Washington, a defense that you can beat, but they've been ascending as the season goes on. Russell Wilson, only 50% completion percentage, but finds his way to throw 3 touchdowns, 1 interception in the mix, and 195 yards. He goes from a middle-of-the-pack matchup to an outstanding matchup against the Baltimore defense. They're not expected to have Kyle Hamilton. This secondary is in shambles. We've seen this Ravens defense get lit up most recently by Joe Burrow twice. Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield put up 20 on him. Dak put up 30 on him earlier this season. Everybody lights up this defense, and the red-hot Russell Wilson, who is going to get game 2 with Mike Williams. That's an additional over-the-top weapon. George Pickens is heating up, and this is a 2-dimensional offense. The Ravens might be good at stopping the run. We know Arthur Smith's going to continue to run the ball to open up the pass. I think this is a really nice spot for Russell Wilson to continue his fantasy, I'm going to say, excellence right now.
Absolutely. Now, my running back is Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans against the Minnesota Vikings. Look, I know the Vikings are lights out against the run, and the offensive line in Tennessee is not good. Tyjae Spears came back from an injury, played 46% of the snaps last week. He had 7 carries, but he had 3 targets. He didn't do much with targets, but that said, Minnesota is going to bring a lot of pressure. Minnesota likely plays with a lead in this game. Tony Pollard has been very overworked for the last month. You saw it last week. They tried to get Spears in. You got to think Pollard is still needing some rest. Spears could play 55% of the snaps. He could see 6 or 7 targets here. I think as a receiver, Tyjae Spears gets it done this week. Bank on that one being better than usual. Anthony, who's your running back?
At running back, I'm going to go to Alexander Mattison, who has been the more dependable running back in this backfield. Zamir White's an afterthought. Zamir White was actually out-snapped by Amir Abdullah, who led the backfield in snaps going into the bye week. But I'm still going to lean on Alexander Mattison. Abdullah might be the receiver out of the backfield, but when this team gets close to the red zone, we have seen Alexander Mattison punch in the touchdowns this year, and he's also deceptively a solid receiver out of the backfield. He has multiple games this season already with over 5 targets, including in 2 out of the past 4 games he's played. He gets a nice matchup against Miami. I get we saw Miami kind of stifle the Rams, especially on the ground on Monday night in a bounce-back spot, and I'm going to play the matchup against the Dolphins.
If you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, you can check out all of our fantasy football content and our rankings by getting a free 2-day trial. You don't even need a credit card. Head on over to rotowire.com/Jim. You can check out all our content. If you like it, join the team. If not, just glad you stopped by and saw us. All right, wide receiver. Anthony Ray McCloud's been in a little bit of a funk lately. He hasn't had more than 30 yards in any of the last 4 games. He does have 1 touchdown in there, but I do like him as a sneaky start at the Broncos this week because Denver is going to bring a lot of pressure. What does that mean? Shorter passes. Ray McCloud plays, he isn't a primary slot because they rotate all their receivers in the slot, but McCloud runs the shorter routes. I think this is a game where he sees 6 to 8 targets instead of the usual 3 to 4. So I do think Ray McCloud has some upside in this game again to get over on that Denver pass rush. Anthony, who do you like at receiver?
Coming out of the bye, I like Cedric Tillman this week. Remember, the 3 games going into the Week 10 bye, Tillman has been on a tear, over 16 PPR points in those 3 straight games. He has gone for at least 9 targets in all of those games, 2 of which over 11 targets. He's getting it done with touchdowns, with receptions, and with yards. Coming out of the bye week, he gets the New Orleans Saints. This defense, who just traded away Marshawn Lattimore, I get they made the head coaching change. This team's going to have a spark here and there, but they are still a handicap when it comes to defending the pass. Jameis Winston, we know he's a better, at least right now, thrower of the football than Deshaun Watson, and he hyper-targets Cedric Tillman. I think Tillman's going to be a high floor play with a chance to pop for over 20 fantasy points for the second time this year.
At tight end, I like Tanner Hudson of the Cincinnati Bengals at the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, last week on Thursday Night Football, we saw Hudson targeted 7 times, catches 6 for 42 and a touchdown, 35% of the snaps. The Bengals like to use all 4 of their tight ends, but we saw last year down the stretch, Tanner Hudson was a primary receiving tight end. He has a very different role than Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki's more of a stretch vertical guy, more on the sidelines. Hudson's more of that safety valve, quick release player. And then he picked up where he left off as soon as Eric All was lost for the season. The Chargers have been very good with their 3 safety look, stopping downfield passing, but that leaves a lot underneath. And we know Joe Burrow does throw underneath. I think Tanner Hudson gets, again, about 6 or so targets. And if you're really scratching a tight end, he could be a way to go. Anthony, who are you looking at tight end?
At tight end, I like Will Dissly this week. Great matchup against Cincinnati, who's been gashed by the tight end of late. And Will Dissly is involved in this offense. Since week 6, he's had at least 5 targets in all but 1 game. Last week against Tennessee, a meager 8 PPR points, but he did see 6 targets, catching 5 for 30 yards. He also had 2 red zone targets last week, and in total since week 6 he's had a total of 5 red zone targets, so he's getting used. He hasn't got one in the end zone yet, but again, the targets are there, the red zone usage is there, and now in week 11 this is going to be the easiest matchup he's faced since week 1. I'm in on Will Dissly if you need a desperation play at tight end.
My wild card play is Mike Williams of the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Mike Williams played 12% of the snaps last week. First time with the team. It may not get a lot higher. Yes, he had 1 target. It was a 32-yard touchdown to end the game for them. Big deal. But here's the point. The Baltimore Ravens stuff the run. I don't see Pittsburgh running well. How do you beat the Ravens? The Ravens have been terrible at stopping downfield passing all year. What's the one thing Russell Wilson can do? Throw moonballs. George Pickens is on the other side. Who is the defense really going to worry about? It's George Pickens. What does that mean? Mike Williams could get 1, 2, or 3 downfield passes. Even if he catches 1 of them, he may cash in for what you need for fantasy. But if he hits on 2, that could be a big day. Anthony, who's your wild card player?
My wild card is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Last week, MVS gave us a vintage MVS game. 3 targets, catching all 3 for 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looks like he is replacing the injured for the year Rashid Shaheed in that big play over the top role, which is what Marquez Valdes-Scantling does best. Derek Carr can also put the ball where it needs to go. What I really love about this is the matchup. He gets the Cleveland Browns. This team is going in the wrong direction, but they can score points on offense. I actually see a deceptive shootout between these 2 teams, and if they're going to have to go deep, we saw big play receivers like Quentin Johnston and Nelson Aguilar in the past 2 games both find the end zone. I could see a similar path for another solid outing where MVS finds the end zone again against this depleted Cleveland Browns secondary.